Ellison's Cave Incident. On the 17th of June 2013, a group of 4 cavers entered Ellison's Cave in Walker County, Georgia, drawn by its reputation for housing 2 of the deepest vertical pits in the continental United States. Marcus Donnelly, an experienced vertical caver with 8 years of rappelling background, led the expedition as team coordinator. His younger brother, Travis Donnelly, a casual caver making his 4th underground trip, joined to experience the famous Fantastic Pit. Rebecca Chen, Marcus's longtime caving partner and rope rigging specialist, brought redundant anchor systems and over 1,200 feet of static rope. Tom Ashford, Travis's college roommate and first-time vertical caver, carried a backup helmet, mounted LED light, and Prusik ascenders. Their goal was to rappel the 586-foot Fantastic Pit and return before nightfall. The group entered through Ellison's main entrance at 9:47 a.m., descending a steep mud slope into cool, 54-degree air. They navigated through the upper passage for 40 minutes, headlamps cutting through absolute darkness. Water dripped from calcite formations overhead, echoing in cathedral-sized chambers. The team reached the Fantastic Pit's edge by 11:15 a.m. Marcus and Rebecca rigged the primary descent rope to a boulder anchor, testing the system with their combined weight. The pit dropped vertically into blackness, its bottom invisible from above. Cold air rose from the void, carrying moisture that clung to their gear. Travis began his descent at 11:52 a.m., clipping his rappel rack to the main line. He descended smoothly for the first 200 feet, calling up progress reports every 50 feet. At 340 feet down, his voice became faint, barely audible. Then, silence. Marcus called down repeatedly. No response. Rebecca shouted until her voice cracked. Nothing. Marcus immediately began descending on a secondary rope, heart pounding against his ribs. The darkness pressed in from all sides as he dropped deeper. At 380 feet, his light caught Travis's motionless form, suspended in midair, swaying slightly. Travis's rappel device had jammed against a rope knot, and the sudden stop had caused him to slam into the rock face. He hung unconscious, blood streaming from a gash above his left eye, his breathing shallow and irregular. Marcus reached him within 90 seconds, clipping a safety tether between their harnesses. Travis's helmet had cracked on impact. His eyes remained closed. Marcus slapped his face gently, calling his name. Travis's eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Marcus immediately radioed to the surface using their backup communication system. Rebecca called 911 at 12:41 p.m., while Tom prepared a mechanical advantage haul system. Marcus couldn't raise Travis alone from 380 feet down. He shared his water, applied pressure to the head wound with a bandana, and waited. Cave rescue teams arrived on the surface within 2 hours, but rigging a complex haul system took another 3. Marcus held his brother steady in the darkness, fighting exhaustion as his legs cramped in his harness. At 6:22 p.m., the rescue team began pulling both brothers up simultaneously using a 6-1 pulley system anchored to multiple points. They reached the surface at 8:47 p.m., over 9 hours after entering. Paramedics immediately transported Travis to Erlanger Medical Center in Chattanooga. He had suffered a severe concussion, fractured cheekbone, and mild hypothermia. Travis spent 4 days in observation before being released. He recovered fully over the following months, but never returned to vertical caving. The incident reinforced that even well-planned descents into extreme depth can turn critical in seconds, and that unconsciousness at depth transforms rappelling into a race against time and physiology. Vatnajökull Ice Cave Incident. On the 3rd of February 2019, 6 tourists entered a natural ice cave beneath Vatnajökull Glacier in southeastern Iceland, guided by a commercial tour operator. Eric Johnson, a veteran glacier guide with 12 years of experience leading ice cave tours, headed the group through the translucent blue formations. The tourists included David Walsh, an Irish photographer hoping to capture unique ice formations, accompanied by his wife, Sarah Walsh, a casual hiker making her first glacier visit. Japanese tourists Kenji Tanaka and Yumi Sato, both experienced winter hikers, carried professional camera equipment and crampons. Michael Brennan, an Australian geologist studying glacial structures, brought a geology hammer and field notebook. They entered the cave at 2:15 p.m., under overcast skies, each wearing helmets with mounted lights, insulated layers, and ice cleats. The cave entrance stood 8 feet high, carved by meltwater over countless summers, its walls glowing ethereal blue. The group moved deeper into the glacier, following a natural tunnel that wound 150 feet into the ice. The temperature inside held steady at 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Their breath formed clouds in the still air. Eric pointed out layers of compressed snow from different centuries, visible as dark bands in the ice walls. Overhead, the ceiling formed smooth curves, shaped by ancient water flow. The tourists photographed the stunning formations, their flashes reflecting through crystalline structures. No one noticed the subtle vibrations beginning in the ice. At 3:03 p.m., a deep crack echoed through the tunnel. Eric immediately ordered everyone to move toward the entrance. Before they could take 5 steps, a section of ceiling collapsed. A 2-ton ice block crashed down, landing directly on Michael Brennan. He went down instantly, crushed beneath translucent blue ice. His scream cut off mid-breath. The block pinned him from the chest down, his arms trapped at his sides, his face pressed against the frozen floor. Blood spread slowly beneath the ice, freezing almost immediately. His eyes remained open, conscious but unable to speak. Shock set in within seconds as his core temperature dropped. Eric immediately assessed the situation while calling for emergency services on his satellite phone. David and Kenji tried to lift the ice block, but it wouldn't budge. Eric retrieved an ice axe from his pack and began chipping at the edges of the block, trying to create space around Michael's chest. Sarah held Michael's head, speaking to him constantly, watching his pupils dilate. Yumi timed his breaths, 16 per minute, then 12, then 8. Eric worked frantically, ice chips flying, but the block was solid glacier ice, compressed over decades. Rescue helicopters couldn't reach them inside the cave. After 11 minutes, Michael's breathing stopped. His eyes stared upward at the blue ceiling above. Emergency responders arrived 43 minutes after the collapse. They used thermal cutting equipment to free Michael's body, which took an additional 90 minutes. The cave was immediately closed to tourism pending structural assessment. Glaciologists later determined that unseasonably warm temperatures the previous week had destabilized the ceiling structure, creating invisible fracture lines in the ice. Michael Brennan's death marked the first tourist fatality in a Vatnajökull ice cave in 14 years, a stark reminder that glacial ice remains dynamic and unpredictable, regardless of how permanent it appears. Darby Ice Caves Incident. On the 22nd of January 2017, 3 friends drove to the Darby Wind Cave near American Fork, Utah, seeking adventure during an unusually cold winter. The cave, formed by wind and water erosion, creating ice formations inside, typically attracted dozens of visitors during winter months. Jake Morrison, a college student and casual hiker, organized the trip after seeing photos online. His girlfriend, Emily Patterson, a nursing student with limited outdoor experience, joined to photograph the ice columns. Jake's childhood friend, Ryan Torres, an experienced rock climber familiar with the area, brought climbing rope and carabiners as safety backup. They arrived at the trailhead at 1:30 p.m. wearing winter jackets, gloves, and hiking boots. Each carried a flashlight and their phones. The temperature outside measured 19 degrees Fahrenheit. They hiked the steep quarter-mile trail to the cave entrance, a 10-foot wide opening in the mountainside surrounded by snow-covered pine trees and exposed limestone. Inside, the cave opened into a chamber roughly 30 feet deep and 20 feet wide. Massive ice formations hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, illuminated by their flashlights in shades of white and pale blue. The floor consisted of uneven ice covering bedrock, slick and treacherous. The 3 explored carefully, taking photos against the ice columns. Their breath created fog clouds that drifted through the beams of their flashlights. The air temperature inside held at 25 degrees, slightly warmer than outside, but still bitterly cold. Jake ventured toward the back of the cave where ice had formed a false floor, covering a natural pit beneath. The ice appeared thick and stable, indistinguishable from the solid formations around it. Ryan warned him to stay near the walls where the rock remained visible, but Jake insisted the ice looked safe. At 2:47 p.m., Jake stepped onto the center ice floor. It gave way instantly. He plunged 12 feet straight down into a hidden crevasse, landing hard on his right leg. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the cave. Jake screamed, clutching his shin. Emily rushed to the edge, shining her light down. Jake lay crumpled at the bottom, his right tibia visibly fractured, bone pressing against the skin, blood soaked through his jeans. The crevasse walls were smooth ice, impossible to climb. Jake's breathing came in rapid gasps as shock and hypothermia began to set in simultaneously. He tried to stand but collapsed immediately, crying out in agony. The bottom of the crevasse was barely 4 feet wide, leaving him no room to maneuver or position himself comfortably. Ryan immediately called 911 at 2:51 p.m. No cell signal. He ran outside, finally getting reception 50 yards from the entrance, and reached emergency services at 2:58 p.m. Emily stayed with Jake, talking to him constantly, trying to keep him alert. She removed her jacket and dropped it down to him, but he couldn't move his leg to position it properly. His teeth chattered violently. His lips began turning blue. Emily kept shouting questions to force him to respond, fighting to keep him conscious. Ryan returned with the rope, anchoring it to a boulder outside the cave entrance. He attempted to rappel down himself but quickly realized the ice walls were too unstable and slick. Any wrong move could send more ice crashing down on Jake below. Utah County Search and Rescue arrived at 4:23 p.m. with technical rope equipment and a litter basket. They assessed the situation and determined the ice around the crevasse edge was dangerously thin. They rigged a proper anchor system outside the cave with multiple redundant points and lowered a paramedic into the crevasse at 4:51 p.m. The paramedic stabilized Jake's leg with an inflatable splint and administered pain medication through an IV line. Jake had lost significant blood and remained only semi-conscious. They secured Jake in a rescue litter, carefully padding his injured leg, and hauled him up using a 3-1 pulley system. The extraction took 28 minutes of careful, steady pulling. Jake had been trapped for 2 hours and 19 minutes. His core temperature had dropped to 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Paramedics transported him to Utah Valley Hospital, where surgeons inserted a titanium rod to repair his fractured tibia. He underwent 3 months of physical therapy before regaining full mobility. The Darby Wind Cave was not closed, as the hidden crevasse resulted from seasonal ice formation rather than structural instability. But warning signs were posted at the entrance about false ice floors. Jake never returned to ice caves, the memory of those 2 hours in freezing darkness proving stronger than any sense of adventure.